Hello and welcome to this session all about the future of hi-fi. My colleagues and I will be discussing the changing landscape of audio technology and what we might be able to expect in the coming years from this hugely innovative industry. My name is Joe Cox and I'm the content director on What Hi-Fi, and I'm joined by Becky Roberts, the brand's hi-fi editor, and Andrew Murphy, another one of our reviewers specializing in audio. Now, for a lot of the products we review, broadly speaking, the basic technology hasn't changed for decades. But conversely, the wider world of consumer electronics is a fast-moving and unpredictable industry. If you'd come to me when I got my first Discman in the 90s and said these shiny discs would be replaced by music that travels through the air from a telephone, and at the same time we'd still be filling our shelves with vinyl and cassette tapes, I might have questioned your sanity. So, with that in mind, the future of hi-fi, it isn't as simple as just assuming we'll keep getting and wanting higher and higher resolution audio, is it?
Well, no, and I'm not sure that's really what we should be chasing either. Are we already high-res enough? I don't think we can say that. At least we don't want to turn down more detailed and better textured audio, but that pursuit can take the focus off music if you're not careful. When we talk about music, we want to talk about the performance as much, if not more, than the texture and timbre of the instruments. Now, there isn't a direct correlation between higher resolution and losing the performance, not at all. But if we're talking about where we want to see brands focus, then it probably isn't on eking out more detail. I think the biggest losers are probably the mainstream, who, for better or worse, listen to more compressed streams, or at least high-res. The potential of it isn't being utilised by most people most of the time. So in that sense, I think I'd personally throw all my money into better rhythmic and dynamic performances, getting more musicality from entry-level and mid-range products before cravings for even higher res took over.
Yeah, and it's not only that. I mean, we're reaching a point now where music streamers are sounding better than ever. You know, from a connection point of view, they're definitely more stable than they were sort of 10 years ago. And you wonder if that leap in progression is going to slow at some point. Early music streamers, despite always having had supported the high sample rates, they generally struggle with timing and dynamics, and that's not really the case anymore. They're now much better than they were from a performance point of view. They can better compete with the CD players and the other sources that we've been used to. You can spend hundreds now rather than thousands to get a good music streamer, and the performance between those two, it's all in performance that makes the difference. Because broadly they all have the same feature list. They've got Bluetooth, AirPlay, they all support 24-bit streaming, they've got DLNA, they all support the music services. So they do really offer a whole world of music at your fingertips. They're really good for that sort of thing. But on the other side of the scale, can we really be expected to keep upgrading our hardware to keep up with the progression in streaming? So obviously the good thing about software is that it can be updated over the air. It's not only easy to do, but it means you can wake up one day and your streamer is better equipped than it was the day before. But on the other hand, there's the issue of software expanding past hardware, and we've seen it with Sonos. It's first generation products. The processor inside them can no longer handle the software that's being brought out, because streamers at the end of the day are just computers. And as software progresses, as technology progresses, as streaming platforms progress, they might surpass the physical processing chips in equipment, and it sort of makes them defunct. For a good example of that would be with MQA. People want to support MQA and they want to support Tidal Connect. But a lot of the time it's going to require a hardware upgrade. So you never know what's going to come out at the moment. There's a lot of technology there and it's supported by a lot of hardware. But if something comes out in the next 5 or 6 years that an existing streamer can't support, it comes into the issue of how long are these hardware products going to last. If you pick up a CD player or turntable 20 years ago, it can do as much as one these days can. So I think high res and streaming is certainly here to stay, and obviously we're thankful for it. But I think we just have to be on our toes for new directions led by music fans, and as much as manufacturers, really.
And that's a good point, isn't it? Because a lot of the sort of classic hi-fi components, like, you know, just a pair of passive speakers, obviously have a really long shelf life, and a lot of the old speakers that even we get into test or to reassess now still really stand up, whereas some of the newer components coming out have a relatively short shelf life by comparison, because of all the, you know, the reasons you mentioned in terms of processing chips and the fact that, you know, they're a computer, which can mean they become outdated. And things like headphone batteries, you know, we accept that they will stop working and we will need to upgrade them in time, which certainly isn't that sustainable. I wanted to go back to what you were saying about the progress in music streamers and sound quality, because that's something we're also hearing a lot in all-in-one systems, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, that's an area we can probably expect to see a lot more focus from the industry's main players. You know, all-in-one systems have got more popular and they take many forms, and especially, you know, the rise in popularity of what I would call all-in-one stereo speaker systems. So, you know, here we're talking pair of stereo speakers, and built in is amplification as well as a streaming module, physical connections. Although these can either be built into the cabinets or in a small partnering hub that sits next to it and wirelessly transmits to the speakers. So then, you know, you've got a complete system from 2 or maybe 3 boxes. We saw, you know, our first really good integration of this from Kef a few years back with the LS50 wireless. You know, there were 2 boxes physically tethered with a wire, but that's all you needed. You had everything at your fingertips. You just, you know, you had an app and you could access all the music. You know, and that evolved into a pair of sequels that got rid of the wire. And, you know, now a lot more brands are bringing out similar products. You know, we've just brought out an issue of What Hi-Fi, the May issue, and it sees, you know, Dolby, Kef and Q Acoustics all with all-in-one speaker systems. But, you know, there's obviously more all-in-one designs as well that people are coming up with. You know, we've just not long ago given an award to the Project Jukebox E turntable system, which is, you know, not only just a record player, but it's got Bluetooth and amplification integrated. So, you know, plug speakers in and you're away. You know, a lot of people really like that convenience and the easy setup. You know, it's the same for these single box streaming systems from Ning, NAD, Arcam. Cambridge has just announced a new one. You know, there's a lot of all-in-one designs now where you simply add speakers, and, you know, you've got a whole system. And I think, yeah, there has been a focus, you know, on these sort of designs from the big companies, and, you know, we've slowly got better sound, you know, at higher prices. So, you know, I think they offer great flexibility in terms of accommodating them. You know, you haven't got loads of cables. You know, you can avoid poor system matching. They're easy to use via an app. But, you know, they are also restrictive, of course, in that, you know, they don't allow for an obvious upgrade path.
No, well, that's always been a factor in why people prefer separates, isn't it? But as all-in-ones and just had speaker systems become more serious, for want of a better word, I suppose it isn't inconceivable that we start to see kind of modular versions, or really sort of hybrids of separates and an all-in-one. You know, it's something you can already do with a turntable. These already paired decks, tone arms, cartridges, you know, they haven't been the norm forever. It's still certainly not the norm the higher you go up the price brackets. But even with a basic deck, there's a clear upgrade path with changing those bits and pieces. You know, even just putting a new mat on it, or changing the platter. You know, you can already do that kind of thing. Even with a pair of speakers, you can change the crossover if you really want. If you want to get into the cabinet. But I mean, there's no reason, I suppose, that you couldn't end up having that same sort of idea, but being able to change a streaming module or an amp inside a just add speakers unit. It can keep the same easily accommodated footprint, you know, keep the lack of wires, just plug it into your speakers, but also give yourself more room for an upgrade.
Yeah, I think tinkering has always been a big part of the kind of hi-fi world, especially for the real kind of enthusiast and who's prepared to, you know, get their hands dirty and maybe take off a cabinet or take off a lid, or at least start really thinking about how they could personalize their own products and give their own little upgrade. And that's probably something that a lot of people have been doing over this last year, with a lot of us, depending on where you are in the world, spending more time at home. Do we think that this period that we've all just been through and lockdown here in the UK is something that's going to have affected what people want and how the industry develops?
Yeah, in terms of what the market wants and needs, and certainly there'll be a lasting effect. One of our colleagues, Becky Scarrett, wrote an opinion piece recently on why she'll never own a pair of noise cancelling headphones, which almost broke the website with the amount of page views. But for different reasons, I've not worn closed back headphones for more than a year now. I don't need to be respectful of colleagues and their noise concerns now that you're all in a different part of the same city. But with all of us working more from home now, working setups can become more extravagant. Focus can be less on portability, which is always a huge selling point, but more focus on desktop DACs, open back headphones, putting that back onto sound quality more than having multiple uses. I mean, that's certainly home audio is going to become a less niche market, and hi-fi might become a less niche market as a whole. We've got probably, predicting we'll have a lot more enthusiasts after the lockdown who are interested in sound as much as music than we did before. How the industry reacts to that is another thing, but certainly the market won't be the same as before. We've not just had a strange hiatus, things will change forever.
Yeah, and it's not just a growth in enthusiasts as well, but if there's a general growth in the market and more people with an interest in great sound as well as great music, that could bleed into the speaker market too. So I think there could even be an increased focus on small and budget hi-fi speakers, to accommodate the people who previously thought that anything more than a Sonos One or an Amazon Echo wasn't for them. Because wireless speakers like these, there's only so much that tiny drivers inside tiny boxes can do. Or, at the very least, there might just be more demand for wireless speakers and smart speakers to sound better. Apple and Amazon, the world's biggest companies who could rely on just their names for sales, have already proven that already great sound is a focus for their smart speakers. Sonos has recently supported 24-bit streaming, and the smart foundations of these platforms are pretty solid now. And it seems like the obvious growth area for these would be sound quality. Hopefully demand from hi-fi enthusiasts or just more of a care for sound quality can accelerate that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it would be great, as Andrew was saying, to think that with more people spending time at home, we might have a sort of resurgence or just an uplift in the number of people who are really thinking about what system they can have, and people who are into music thinking, hang on, I can probably do better than this Amazon Echo, But I guess regardless, even if that does happen, smart speakers are definitely something that's here to stay. The market is so big and there's some really big players. And they do some really cool things and offer some features that aren't necessarily part of a standard hi-fi system that we can all appreciate and have a wider impact on the audio industry and what everybody's doing. Two of those, 3D audio and Dolby Atmos, have certainly been adopted more widely in recent months. Are they things we should be getting excited about?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there certainly has been a shift towards more 3D sound entering the mainstream. If you think of 3D audio, you might just think, of going to a cinema, surround sound in an AV setup, lots of speakers, lots of faff, out of a lot of people's reaches, maybe just in the home cinema domain even. But 3D's entering the music space now. You've got Dolby with Dolby Atmos Music and Sony with Sony 360 Reality Audio. That they've both created these 3D audio formats. They're available on streaming services like Tidal and Amazon. There's an increasing amount of hardware available that supports these. I mean, the Atmos label is in almost every corner of the market now. The idea behind this is like in the cinema domain, it's just to create a more immersive experience, draw you in, sit the listener smack bang in the middle of a 360-degree soundstage, whether they're listening to smart speakers, phones, headphones, or even, multiple speakers. And I think there has been an increase in, it's almost a fad, maybe, it's got a lot of legs, I think. I mean, Apple has got its spatial audio processing, which it's different from the other two, but it has a similar aim in just making that more immersive experience, just from, well, in that case through headphones. But yeah, I think with these formats, you go back to Dolby Atmos Music because it's the most prevalent. But yeah, you have music mixed in a certain way. sounds are plotted precisely in a sound field, and then you've got a compatible product that is decoding that and presenting that the best it can. But it kind of goes back to what you're playing on. Can it really be done enough in like more budget products like phones? And I was saying that smart speakers support it as well, because you've got relatively affordable soundbars now. You've got the Atmos label on phones. You've got the Amazon Echo Studio that's designed for the Atmos experience. Dolby's argument would be that products with that label, they're always going to sound better than standard audio. But there's definitely varying levels of Dolby Atmos experiences. You're always going to get a better experience with more speakers, bigger speakers. So 3D audio is big, and I think it will continue to, it obviously has its place in audio, and it'll be interesting to see how far it goes into the industry. Or it could just be a fad. It could come and go as quickly as 3D TVs, but at least it's accessible now for music fans to dip their toes in and give it a go.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to hear some Atmos mixes at Abbey Road and Dolby Europe, as have a few of us on the team, and it is an experience, but it's also very different. One was REM's Automatic for the People, which is only a couple of years younger than me, I think, so I pretty much grew up with it and went to school with it. And that was, the remixing of that was done with the band, and I embarrassed myself and spoke to them after this event, and they were all pleased with it, as everyone seemed to be. But it sounded like a different album, when you're living inside something rather than having it in front of you. I think the question will be, if it does take off, or when it does even, who will be doing the mixing of these legacy records, because it's not as simple as just shifting some parts around. And even surround mixes don't really compare when they're with a properly rendered Atmos mix. Going on from that, will it affect how people start to record music? Will albums be recorded for Atmos rather than just being a different version, like a vinyl or digital master? And the answer, there's an obvious answer to that is yes, and another one's no. People will undoubtedly tinker and use it as a tool. But I think it'll be something to be creative with rather than a complete industry game changer. Rarely is technology on our side rather than the instruments what really affects the art. But it's definitely an interesting area and one to watch as it expands. At very least, it'll be the kind of media where you genuinely need the box set for both cuts.
Yeah, I think it's a bit like high-res audio, isn't it? Whereas you want the quality of the recording or the mix, is paramount, and just saying it's high-res audio or just saying it's Dolby Atmos doesn't necessarily mean it's better. But as you both said, it can be amazing, and I think it's great that we all have the opportunity to hear it and make our own minds up. And if there's one thing we know about music lovers and hi-fi fans, it's that we aren't adverse to buying a new edition of their favorite track or indeed film in a brand new format. So that's something for all of us to look forward to. Our time is almost up, but one more question. If you were to design a new product yourselves, what would it be? Is there something that we're missing or that needs improving? Maybe a high-res audio cassette was my suggestion.
Oh, you've stolen my idea, Joe. No, well, given how much of a fixture Record Store Day is in our calendars every year, I wouldn't be averse to coming up with a new type of physical media. I mean, physical formats are certainly not going to die anytime soon. I mean, we've been given the gift of streaming, £10 a month, all access to music, yet we're using that and people are still paying that per vinyl album. So, you can see why, obviously, vinyl's great for its tactility, the cover art is great. Record players no longer have to be daunting. There's a lot of plug and play designs. So many vinyl albums in the world, they can be cheap to get hold of, with job lots. And I think, with streaming, it's brought that convenience, but a lot of people still value ownership, and that, that's something that you can't get with streaming. You can make your playlists, but tracks can disappear. And, you know, apart from just having that playlist on your phone and maybe even downloading it to your device, you know, it's not the same as having a collection of something that you can flick through. And, you know, going on to the fact that, you know, of the ownership, you can get digital files with vinyl too, so sort of get best of both worlds. So yeah, it seems to be a fad that's sort of standing the test of time, which I suppose means it defies the definition of a fad. But, you know, even cassettes having a small resurgence now. So yeah, going back to your original point, so I was getting a bit sidetracked there. I don't know what it would even look like. And even if I did, I wouldn't be giving my ideas to you lot. But yeah, I think something to replace CD, something to pick up from that. I mean, there's been so many cool ideas out there recently in terms of ways to, you know, coming up with new ways to, you know, physically enjoy your music again. You know, Tom Beck came up with a media player recently, I think, that focused on the love of cover art, but in a digital format. So I think there's plenty of scope for, you know, for that to happen, you know, combining digital and physical media. But yeah, I mean, there might only be room for one physical format at a time, so maybe I'll just have to wait until till vinyl goes on the downward slope for my bigger rival of my unknown physical format. But yeah, I mean, physical media is here to stay, so I think that would be a safe one.
I'd probably try to be less selfish and think more about the consumer than lining my pockets. There's a couple of problems I'd like to solve. Firstly, I'd come up with a magic spell to make wireless components always work. We're probably in a strange position where we've got loads of things in the same room at the same time, connecting and disconnecting. At home, you can set something up and basically forget about it. But still, if something cuts out once or twice, it's too much. It's not a dig at a particular manufacturer, by the way. But one day I'd like to approach a review of a wireless product and not assume I'll spend the first half an hour of poking around at it like a dog trying to operate a smartphone. Similarly, I would like a kind of silent voice assistant for people like me who feel uncomfortable talking to robots. I love being on my own, and I know a lot of other people love me being on my own as well. But even in an empty room, I can't bring myself to talk to a speaker. You know, so when will there be a smart product that can kind of just read your intentions rather than making you speak out loud? We probably don't want all these data harvesters lurking in our brains, but anyway.
Great. So we're going to have SACD2 from Becky and maybe some sort of brain reading wireless speaker from Andrew. Sounds ideal. Great. That's about all we have time for. So thank you both for your insight, and thanks to all of you out there watching. Hopefully there's been something of interest there for you and something to think about as you assess the future of hi-fi. And we look forward to having this discussion again next year to see exactly what we got right or indeed wrong. Thanks.